Good day, it's Constantine. In the second part of this video of custom SE-02 patches, we will be looking at creating bass sounds. Now the first thing we need to talk about though is what is bass. Now unlike the previous video where we created a rhythm section, even though there are different kinds of snare sound, everyone has a somewhat similar sound on their mind. Same goes for kick. There are certain characteristics that make the sound of these instruments be quite close when different people think about it. But with bass, it's not like that. So a fretless bass has a different sound from a fretted bass. That has a different sound from a double bass. That has a very different sound from an analog synth bass. But the common characteristic is that they occupy roughly the same frequency spectrum. Now, take this for example. I only have a sawtooth on oscillator 1, and if I start taking the filter down, now I can use it as a bass. So given the context of the track, almost anything can be used as a bass. So instead of trying to create some patches and tell you, that's a bass, end of story, because that would be a bass to me, I will instead focus on certain characteristics that will give your bass sounds, a different flavor. Mixing more than one oscillator to have a thicker sound, using modulation, or delay and LFO to create some movement, cross modulation as well. So, let's focus on adding some spice to your bass. Let's start with the first spice, if you will, adding filter modulation to create that thump at the beginning of the note, almost like a finger picking the string. Now let's use all oscillators. Now, even though I want a low note from my oscillators, I will not go to 16 or 32 feet. The lower the octave, the longer the waveform, and you can hear that cycle repeating at times. And for this example, I don't want this movement it creates. So let's do 8 for both. And actually, I'll turn this up. The amount depends. We'll just go with and adjust to taste as we go along. So let's do it for the first two. Let's leave the third one 16 feet, but I'm not going to use a very bright sound. So either triangle or reverse sawtooth is fine. So for the first one, let's do square and take the filter down a bit. For the second one, let's go sawtooth. Okay, that is fine. Let's take that down a bit. Keep tracking. Let's leave it at 1/3. Right, and now let's use a modulation to create that effect. I'm going to take the contour up a bit. Remember, that is the modulation amount, essentially. So the filter is alright there. Take the sustain down a bit. So you see it has that thump at the beginning. Let me take the sustain down a bit. And of course you can play with the decay and change the sound. So let's try another bass now. All I have to do is play with the amp envelope of this is my previous parts, and make it behave more like an acoustic bass. So I'm going to take away down the decay and sustain. And I'll have something more acoustic-ish. Just adjust the decay. Okay, let's try a thicker and more aggressive bass. Now, first way to thicken something up is to use multiple oscillators. So again, but this time I want lower fits and brighter waveforms. So let's do oscillator 1, 16 feet, and let's do square is fine. Oscillator 2, let's do square again, and let's leave it at 8 feet. And oscillator 3, let's go 16 feet, and let's do sawtooth. Right, so let's add some noise as well. Let's filter it actually. That's fine, and let's again add some modulation. Gonna leave key tracking on for both. As you can hear, the sound is thicker and more aggressive, and just listen to one note, has a bit of movement. So, first thing is to mix all your oscillators and play with the settings. And I just added a bit of noise. Another great little trick is to add delay. Now you can use delay in this synthesizer to create a slap delay effect that creates a sense of reverb, a sense of space. So you don't want that here, so stay away from that small delay times, unless of course that's what you want, a sense of space. But most of the times I avoid using things that add space to bass, but I do love delay as a creative effect. So let's look at the parts we have and just simply add delay. Play around with it, so so if you want to be locked in tempo, you can always use the sync option here and just put the switch on D for delay, or LD for LFO and delay if you want to have both in sync. Another great way to add movement to your bass sound is LFO. Let's go with 2 oscillators. Let's go oscillator 1, let's do sawtooth, let's go 8 feet, and let's do oscillator 2, 8 feet as well, or just leave it at 16. Let's leave it at let's do square wave. Let's turn it up in the mixer. Let's filter it down, and let's add some modulation as well, just a tiny bit. Key track I'm going to leave up. Yeah, just leave it up. So that is our sound, and now I'm going to add some LFO. I'm going to use both filter and oscillator LFO. Now, if you choose different waveforms, it will obviously change the quality of the sound. I like sine wave and triangle because I want to be, subtle movements at a medium rate. So I'm going to play one note, just listen to the movement. Another great thing you can add on your bass is glide. So let's take a look at the parts we have. And let's just add glide. So here's without. And with, I'm going to use linear. Let's add a bit more. That's too much. Now let's actually try and use delay as well with glide. So I'm going to turn it on. Let's make it a bit cleaner, so I'm going to put oscillator 1 at 8 feet, and let's do square. Let's do narrow pulse for oscillator 2, and let's do 16 feet. Oh, it's cleaner already. 8 feet, let's go. Let's leave it as sawtooth. A bit more. Of course, you know, the playing style plays an important role as well. If it's too busy, both delay and modulation and glide might be too much. So, you know, adjust it according to context as always. Let's create even more movement by engaging the filter. So we have cross modulation in this synth, so why not use that as well? The first knob controls the cutoff based on the settings of the second oscillator. So let's go for 16 feet on the first oscillator. Let's do sawtooth. Let's go 8 feet for the second one. For starters, we're going to try other stuff as well. Let's do pulse. And let's do sawtooth for the second one. 8 feet is fine. Let's take the filter down a bit. So I don't want any modulation. I'm going to leave key track off. Release 2. Let's do 1 and 2 because I want to try some filter modulation here as well. Okay. So that's the sound. Let's turn X mode on, and I have sync on just to have things a bit tighter. You see, I think it's too high, so I'm gonna have this annoying high note there. I'm gonna put it on 16 feet. You see, it disappears. I'm just gonna hold one note and listen to how the filter moves. So that's with cross modulation. So you can hear the movement of the filter. Now let's try and change the settings of the second oscillator and see how that behaves. In any case, let's go back to 16 feet. Let's do pulse again, and let's try with some modulation now. Let's take the contour up a bit, take the filter gate up. So you have that thumb at the beginning with the filter modulation, and you also have the filter moving because of the cross modulation. So I'm going to hold one note so you can have a listen. You can also have modulation on the first note and not on the following ones, and you can do that by having modulation trigger off. Now let's try that. I like how that sounds, so let's take the filter down. So I want release for both envelopes, so 1 and 2. And I want a lot of modulation. Take the filter down a bit more. And adjust, this gain. And sustain or release. So you can hear the first one is exaggerated, and now it's on every note. But if I turn modulation trigger off, it will only play on the first note, and when I play legato, it would not be triggered. So I have to lift my finger and restart, and then it will restart as well. And that can be like. So depending on how you play. In any case, that would be it for this video. So we have looked at various ways of adding spice to your bass. And there's no right or wrong, just keep experimenting, come up with your own, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching.